Find yourself a booth, order up a cold one. This is the Spring Bar. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm Casey and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Florida Mike and Joe in the OC. Gentlemen, how are you today?
Casey, how you doing? We made it, episode 2.
Yeah,
How cool is that?
Episode 2.
I'm happy that episode 1 got out the door.
Episode 1, yeah, after
Completed
a
episode
last
1.
minute hiccup. Joe was off having fun. He left Casey and I in the trenches to fix that. We essentially saved the world, I think.
You did.
Yeah, at least
You did.
at least
With
our
some
world.
duct tape and chewing gum. It was very well done.
Duct tape and chewing gum. We MacGyvered that.
Yeah, I was trying to find
but-
the cheapest option out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. We've got a lot to talk about today. So I think we just, should we get
New
right
watch
into it?
alert.
Yeah, do we have
Oh,
any new
NWA,
acquisitions?
new watch alert. Here it
New
is.
watch alert.
Unboxing.
Oh boy.
Unboxing live. Came in
Went
direct
live.
today from
Fall
Columbia,
off again.
the country. We got a UPS bag. Inside, I've got a nice little sachet of wonderfulness. Do we got guesses? Guesses immediately?
Country of origin.
Country of origin?
Yeah.
Where did I purchase it from, or where is the watch from?
Where did you purchase it from?
Colombia, Bogota, Colombia.
I'm guessing it's a watch.
Nice little bit of paper towel here.
So how many kilos?
Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. All right. No other guesses? Nothing?
No, did you already take it out? You didn't ASMR that paper towel for us?
Oh, it's a paper towel. Ready?
All right. What do you got?
Case back.
Oh, hang on.
What is?
Dial.
Bro, I have one of those.
I forgot that's what was coming from there.
Oh wait, maybe I don't have one of those. What?
No, you don't have
you
one
may
of those.
not.
This is something that
What do
I
I
think
have?
Joe bought for me. Not for me. I think he bought it out of spite,
Out of
just
spite.
to rub it in my face.
This is
Because it
this is
what?
the Bulova Royal Broke, and this one, as you can see, has the center
It's
part of the
royally
look has been-
broke.
It is royally broke. It has
Yeah.
been taken off, and so it'll hold a regular strap, but it's been chewed up. Boy, it's been chewed up. We're gonna have to see what we can do to tweak that just a little.
You know
bit.
what that is, Casey?
That's what I thought it was at first.
Oh no, sir.
No.
Sir.
The case backs what made me. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. The Bulova, the controversial Bulova Royal Oak.
Royal
Some people,
Royal broke
the Royal Oak. Why don't you just call it an RC Cola while you're at it?
because it's the Royal Broke.
Again, it's royally broke. But that's a cool controversial piece. That is actually one that I really want. If we ever talk about Grail watches, that is my vintage Grail.
Is it really?
It is.
Well,
I have a vintage Grail and a modern Grail. That one's
once
my
I,
vintage Grail.
Once I have this off to repair, we'll chat.
It's highly unlikely.
You never know. You never know.
Is it going to Magic Hands?
Of course, it's going to Magic Hands.
Oh well, okay. I'll stay tuned. I'll see what it looks like.
Stay tuned.
We'll see. All right. So that's your NWA.
It is.
Can I go?
Please.
All right. So I bought this watch and I have not been able to talk about it to anybody because technically this is a Christmas gift. And by the time this episode comes out, Christmas will have passed. So I'm okay to talk about it here. This is a watch that I have been chasing for quite a while. It's very hard to find one of these in good condition because it is a base metal bezel, a plated case, chrome plated case. And to find one that hasn't been all chewed up or pitted is very difficult. I am talking about, what year is this? This is a 1971. This is a Caravel. This is called the How to Tell Time watch.
That's lovely.
This was actually made to give to your child to teach them how to tell time. But what's cool is it's designed to tell them minutes past an hour or minutes to an hour. So that's why the dial is divided in half. From 6 to 12, it says 2, and from 12 to 6, it says after. So you would say 10 after 3, 20 right. to 7, so on and so forth. So I bought this for my daughter because every time she asks me what time it is and I tell her it's 20 after 6, she always gets frustrated. Why can't I just say 6:20? So I found this watch to her, to give to her, because I showed her an old ad and she thought it was cool that they actually made something that, was made to tell time that way. So I put it on a Straps-Co. This is a what's the material? I'm drawing a blank.
Suede.
Suede. Yes, thank you. A red suede. It was originally came on a orangey red Corfam strap, so this was kind of close what I could find. But super excited to give it to her. This will be her first watch. Really a 50-year-old vintage watch for a 13-year-old girl. I may be crazy, but she has me as a dad, so she can't have anything less, right?
Correct. Yeah. Correct.
So, and in addition, real quick, I found the desk clock version of that watch, and it's actually on its way here. It'll be here, I think, next week. The desk clock version of that. Very cool. Thank you to Joe, because Joe alerted me on that one. So those are my 2 new watch alerts. One is a watch, one's not a watch, but both very cool. Casey?
Yeah, mine I can't really discuss right now. It's classified, but right now we're pushing all the troops out the back of the C-130, and maybe we'll have a big reveal at some point. But,
so you're having a fire sale, right?
I am. Yeah, I'm a novice at selling watches, but I know we're going to discuss that later. So I'm really hoping I'm doing this right, but we'll see.
Well, I've seen what
you're doing it right.
I've seen what you put on Instagram. That's far better than what a lot of people do. So you're headed in the right direction already.
Yeah. I'm not concerned, at least not yet.
So on the wrist, took it off obviously for the little cameo, is a Bulova 333, or not Bulova, but Caravel 333, and it's got that pylon seconds hand. And what's really cool about this one is it has a 24-hour dial, which, I mean, for me, that's super fitting for the the military theme. But I've never seen another one like this, and it kind of freaked me out. I wasn't sure if it was a Frankenwatch, but if it's a Frankenwatch, it's a really cool one. And then, so I've got my broke out my engineer glass because repping engineers, and I'm drinking this Dogfish.
Ooh, that's good stuff.
Cal IPA, because your boy's fat and he's got to watch his weight.
You didn't say what's the name of that. You didn't say who it's by.
Well, so this is Dogfish Head, and it's the Slightly Mighty low cal. Yeah.
Dogfish Head is good stuff. I like that.
Oh, and I should also say I'll be sneaking a couple pulls off this guy. So
I was wondering what was in the jar.
What about you, Mike?
All right. So I'm wearing my 2014. This is something I've been after for a while. Another thing that Joe helped me with. This is the Bulova Accutron 2, the Snorkel 2. This is reference 96B208. So this is the black dial with the orange and white inner bezel. So this is the one that's most similar to the original snorkels from the early 70s. Like I say, a watch that I have been chasing for a while. This particular combination with the orange and white inner bezel is extremely hard to come by. This is what would you call it? A first edition, first version, early version. It doesn't have 262 kilohertz on the dial. So this is, I guess if you want to call it a solo dial, it says Bulova Accutron 2 at the top. Yeah, first generation. So that's what's on the wrist. In my cup, I have a Southern Comfort eggnog with Fireball.
I have got my Bulova AccuQuartz Millennia, which is from the turn of the century. We can say that, right? It's from the turn of the century. It's a motion quartz, so this got the kinetic on the back, but it charges up a battery for it, a little resistor inside, and it just...
And I love a good kinetic.
Hmm.
It's a nice one. It's a nice one. I've had it serviced by Bolivo like twice, and because we're recording on a school night, I am drinking bubbly water.
So our the first topic we're gonna run through real quick our origin stories, which will kind of revolve around three central points. How long have you been collecting? What or who got you involved in collecting, and where do you see your collection going? So, Mike, why don't you give us a quick rundown on that for you?
All right. So how long have I been collecting? Good 15 years now, I would say. Um, we'll jump right into the who or what got us involved because that's kind of where my story starts. I wasn't really in a watch family, so I don't have a grandfather who really wore any watches. My father never wore watches. The person who kind of got me started was my brother, 8, 9 years old, 10 years old, and my brother had, and I didn't know it at the time, but it was a dive watch because I used to love rotating the bezel and hearing it click. At that age, I had no idea what it was, but I found it fascinating. So maybe that's where I got my fascination with dive watches from. Um, so I've had a lot of the quartz watches, over the years as a kid, and then just kind of got out of it. And it was probably in my mid 20s. Um, he gave me it was a fake Bulgari.
Ooh,
Um, it was a cool watch. I mean, I thought it was neat. I didn't know any different at the time between fake watches and it was a bad thing and all the controversy around it. So that led me to a fake Tag Heuer, the Tiger Woods golf watch, believe it or not. So that's my origin. My origin started in fake watches. But then I started getting, odds and end pieces for Christmas gifts, birthday gifts, things like that. Nothing, extraordinary, over the top fossils and things like that. I mean, nice watches, but not stuff you would talk about in the watch world. Um, and then I would say 2011 is when I bought my Tissot PRS 516 quartz chronograph. And I think that's when I made a turn and really started to get into collecting watches, for the purposes of collecting. I still have that Tissot. That'll be a watch that never leaves the collection. Good memories, bad memories associated with that piece. I use it. My daughter runs cross country, so I take it to all her meets. That's how I time her. It's extremely accurate. And then, like we said last episode, May of 2020 is when I started collecting Bulova and Caravel. Uh, and I'm at where I'm at now. Where do I see my collection heading? Definitely more vintage. There is a modern watch that I do want to purchase. Probably not till the end of next year, perhaps. It's going to take a little bit of saving to get towards that one. But I do want to try and continue some of the Jetstars. There's a lot more models in the Jetstar line that I still find fascinating. But that's the short and sweet version of my origin and where I'm at and where I see everything headed, in the coming years. So, Joe, what about you?
that's it. That's the origin story. I needed a watch so that I could not tell you what time it was, but so I could tell you how much time I have left. Because teaching the way I do, needing to know where things are at. And so from there, I got a really nice CWC like G10, the military watch, and I had
Ooh,
that
do
for
you
a
still
little.
have that?
I don't. I don't have that.
Oh,
That's moved on because it was from there that I decided that I read an article. I was interested, got interested in watches. Found Hodinkee, started looking at Worn and Wound and a couple other of the watch blogs, and they were talking about. I knew Rolex was a thing, and there was probably some good to that thing, and I knew there were a bunch of other places in military watches, kind of. But I was taking a look, and they were talking about a great way to get into collecting and vintage and sort of an unsung hero was Bulova 666 watches, and they were talking about the original surfboard.
hmm
And it's like, oh, okay. So I started to take a look at that, and I found a 666 day date from 1980 in relatively good shape. Bezel was nice, crystal was okay, movement needed some work, and I got that. and I got that one because I already had the other Bulova, and so I recognized the name. It's like, okay. And so this one I bought new in 1999. So just a couple years after that, and it's been about 20 years. And I've been moving towards Bulova through that time. Solidified it solidly when I got my great grandfather's watch, that Burning House watch, and now I've decided to focus strictly on 666.
So you said you had a 666 day date from 1980.
Uh-huh.
Do you still have that one?
I do still have that one.
Which one is that?
Black,
because
black dial, some round markers. We'll throw a picture up of it. I'll show you.
Yeah. Throw a picture up because I don't remember that one. And a 666 in 1980. I mean, that's at the tail end of
P0. It's mechanical. Era. It's got a nice. It's a nice watch. It's a nice watch.
That's cool.
And so we'll throw a picture of that one up, and that's where I'm headed. Going more towards 666. I'm focusing there, trying to get at least one example of each one of the dial variations. So we'll see. So Casey, what do you got? What's your story? Where did you get it?
So I really didn't like watches for a really long time growing up. It just wasn't a thing. Dad always talked about watches for sure. The Moon watch was the grail, but I just never thought it was like a thing for guys to do, to worry about their looks, to worry about accessories. I was like, that's not manly. I'm not gonna worry about that. And then even when I got into the military, like I was just like, it's just a tool. I just need something cheap I can destroy. It doesn't matter. And then once I got out of construction and had some money and I was working a job that I could like wear a nice watch at, that's when I started caring. And that was about 2019. And what kicked it off was I bought a ring, a World War I silver ring that has the engineer crest on it to use as my wedding band. And it had the engineer castle on it and a really nice inscription saying, may God protect you. And I was like, what would go well with this? A vintage watch. So what did I buy? A Vostok, because it was cheap. And I'm looking through like vintage cheap watches. And next thing you know, I'm hoarding and I jump into HMTs, which we'll discuss later when it comes to repairs. But I've got like all these things. So that's kind of how it spiraled out of control. Was I bought a ring and I needed something to go with the ring. And I was also working a job that wasn't going to destroy the watch. Who got me involved? I would say my dad was the one who really like influenced it, because he always talked about Omega growing up. But at the time, I just looked at him and was like, Dad, you're like weird. That's like the most vain thing possible. You're lusting after this inanimate object. And then when I matured and I was able to enjoy, quote, finer things in life, that's when I understood what he was talking about.
So is that maybe where you got your love for the tool watch from? Is it had to be functional rather than looks wise?
Yeah.
Or is it from the standpoint that you're going to break it?
Yeah. That's a good point. I guess I hadn't really thought of that like that. I just don't like the flashy element of things. I like to think I'm a relatively humble guy. However, I beat the army drum like every second I can. So there's that.
Well, that's okay.
So Casey, let me ask you a question. Do you have a dress watch?
I do, but I never really wear it. It's that Bulova American Clipper.
Okay, yeah.
But it's kind of a two thing though, because like
is that the reissue?
It is the reissue, but I have something that matches the original one that is a vintage piece. So I wear them kind of in tandem whenever I'm feeling like it. If I want a small piece, then I go with a vintage. But if I want something bigger, then I'll use the new one.
Oh, so in your fire sale, is that American Clipper one that's going?
Yeah.
Is it?
It might be. I'm not entirely sure, man.
Talk to me later.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Honestly, man, if I could sell to people I know, I think that would be better for me, because in a stupid sense, I'm like, I want them to be treated well.
You want it to go to somebody who's going to appreciate it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. I don't want to sell it on to someone else who just picked it up because they want to flip it later on. I want them to care about the watch. But so that's that. And as far as where I'm heading, man, I feel like I am hoarding. I don't enjoy my watches as much as like some guy like Speedy Fett. Speedy Fett loves his Ploprof and it goes everywhere with him.
He's got some amazing pictures of that watch.
I know, right? I mean, living in freaking Hawaii kind of helps, though.
Yeah.
Location.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, I'm just looking at all these watches and I don't have a connection to any single one, really. So I'm like, F it. They got to go and I got to find something that I will wear regularly. And I don't know if my collection is, I don't know what size I'm looking for. I might do a 7-watch thing. Like, if I can wear a 1 watch each day, that might be a thing. I don't know.
That's a cool direction ahead. You know, that's I mean, there's what really is a good size of a collection. I mean, there's 1 watch guys, there's 3 watch guys. I mean, there's you know, guys that like us who have 35, 50 watches. I mean, whatever number makes you happy, that's your size.
And I feel like I'm going to be probably expanding back to 30 whatever the hell collection at some point, you know. I feel like my collecting ebbs and flows in different ways, you know.
Right. Well, that's always going to be the case, though.
It's like, you know, you're just the caretaker at the moment,
right?
Kind of thing.
Yeah. For
some of these, and that's fine, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that's how you can enjoy the hobby to the fullest. You have something, you enjoy it for a while, move it on, and then buy something else that you're going to enjoy. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Point. I was talking to my dad about that. You know, we're looking at the profits that are potentially made on watches, and I'm like, you know, I can't buy a watch that I don't care about to a certain degree. Yes, it'd be nice if I made profits on all my watches, but I have to care about it for me to be willing to spend the money. But
keep that thought in mind, because we're going to get into watches for investments in a little bit here.
Well, all right, Mike. So why don't you lead us into the next topic here, vintage collecting.
Vintage collecting. This is something that I'm excited to talk about. I pretend to know what I'm talking about, even though I really started collecting vintage not that long ago. But I've learned a lot, because since I started collecting, what did we say, roughly 18 months ago, I've purchased 26 to 30 vintage pieces. So I've learned what to look for, what not to look for, some of the ins and outs. The one thing that I learned is there's 3 misconceptions to collecting, or you can call it whatever you want to call it. One is people think it's expensive to get into collecting. A lot of the Hodinkis, a lot of the well-known blogs talk about vintage Rolex, vintage Omega, Pateks, you name it, whatever. These high dollar 5-6 figure watches. And that's what's blasted all over the internet. It doesn't have to be that expensive. It's not that expensive, which is cool. You can dip your toe into the vintage world for relatively inexpensive. Number 2 is the maintenance side. So people like vintage watches. They either A, don't understand that it needs to be maintained, or don't want to have to go through the hassle of maintaining it, i.e. parts availabilities on some of these older models, the older movements, finding the right guy to do the work. There's a lot of people out there that call themselves watchmakers, and you have to almost interview them to find who's been doing it the longest, what they're versed in, where they've got trained, what they know how to work on, things like that. And number 3 is they want to buy vintage watches as an investment. And really, you shouldn't do that. I don't think. That's my view. You should get into vintage collecting because of the history, because it's what you like, because there's so many different designs that just aren't utilized anymore these days in modern watchmaking. And there's even companies that don't even exist anymore today that you can still buy perfectly good examples of a vintage watch. But if you go into it not thinking it's an investment, you're going to be better off. Again, that's my opinion. So let's talk. We're not going to have any sort of rotation on this one. Let's just jump into the conversation. The money aspect. So you can get into vintage collecting for as cheap as $35. And why do I say $35?
Definitely less.
You can get in for less. I found a $1 Caravel at a flea market. I cleaned it up, wound it, cleaned the dial, took it apart a little bit, blew on it. The thing runs perfect. Keeps great time. Bought it for $1.
Nice.
But I say $35 because, and for those of us that are familiar with Joe's and my Instagram accounts, will probably know something called the Friday Night Watch Fight. And what we did
was know you guys.
Bitter.
Yeah, Joe's bitter. I'm not. I went to Joe and I said, hey, I'm bored. Let's do something. I said, I bet you I can find a better watch for $35 than you can. He said,
you're on.
Game on. So long story short, we went out, bought watches, $35, shipping not included, was not part of the budget. $35 purchase price for the watch. You guys saw what happened. We advertised it all over Instagram. We let you, the viewers, vote on it. You guys made the right choice.
No.
What can I say?
No. That's fine.
It was the right choice. Whatever you had was some dog water.
Hey, don't say that because technically it's my watch now. Actually, technically it is my girl's watch now.
See?
But what I bought was this. This is a 1957 Gruen. We've dubbed it the Banker. I don't exactly know what it's called, but because it has an engraving on the back, it's a service piece for Citizens Bank. We're calling it the Banker watch. It does have a lot of dial patina on it, which some people love and some people hate. Some people will even call it a dirty watch. But whatever it is, it's a perfectly good, perfectly running watch, vintage watch from 1957 for $35.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't have to be expensive. Now, the one thing that you want to do when you're buying a vintage watch, especially for the first time, set yourself a budget. Whatever you're comfortable with, be it $35 or $100,000, right? You can even go higher than that if you want to. But I think for the purposes of everybody that's listening, we're all, fairly level-headed. And I would venture to say $200, $300, $400 is a good number to start with.
Absolutely. You get some killer pieces at that.
You can get some really good stuff.
But you're looking at, you get into a sort of a weird world there, because there's the question that when you're going vintage at that price point, you've got access to some pretty solid new watches as well. And so one of the aspects of vintage watch collecting is it's not exactly durability, but definitely waterproof. So there's a big discussion to be had on that specifically.
Yeah, and that's one thing that, and I'll get into that in a minute, that you have to look for. There's a lot of things to keep in mind when you're looking at a vintage watch, and there's a lot of things that you have to know about a vintage watch before you get into a vintage watch. It's like if you've never had a screw down crown, you need to screw down that crown. Otherwise, it's going to be rendered useless the first time you go swimming. If you don't know about that, that's something you need to educate yourself on. Same as vintage watches,
Right, and there's gives and takes to this. Yeah, one of the gives of having a new watch is you get that comfort, and I can go anywhere, whenever. But with a vintage piece, you have patina, you have story, you have something that isn't made anymore. And so that's the trade-off, right?
So look at it this way. You have a brand new 2021 Chevy Camaro, and you have a 1969 Camaro. Which is the one that you want to take out because you're going to have fun with on a weekend? That's your vintage watch.
That's good. Exactly. I find so many parallels between cars and watches.
Oh, the two worlds collide endlessly. Um,
I agree, but I would still say it's going to depend on where I need to go on that weekend.
yeah, well, that's
If
why
I'm
you do
driving
like we
600
do.
miles, the vintage Camaro is not coming with me because I don't want to push it. Like
Why
literally
not?
have to push the car.
You haven't had it serviced at the right place then.
Or
Well,
you haven't spent enough money on the service.
You haven't exactly.
well,
So my advice is don't buy right away. Don't buy the first vintage watch you come across for $200. Do your research. See what brands fall within your budget because there are some brands that will and there are some brands that will not. Don't buy the cheapest brand or the cheapest option of the highest brand because you're going to buy something that, what are you holding up there?
It's a HMT.
Oh, well, yeah. But do your research. Okay. Once you complete your research, find out whatever issues there may be with that watch. If there's a particular issue with whatever movement might be inside of it, some movements are more reliable than others. Do your research, find out what the known issues are, and then do more research. Take that knowledge that you have and go search listings. Chrono24, eBay, the forums. There's plenty of places to go buy vintage watches, but search, read, look for a deal. Again, don't buy the first thing that you come across because you're excited. Make a wise choice. Make a good purchase because you'll be much happier in the end if you do that. If you just go off.
I'd also say take a look for as many different versions of it as you can. If you figure out what you want, look for the same watch.
Mhm.
Look for multiple options of it. Don't just go with one because you're going to find something else later and you might regret. So give it a little bit of time. That don't buy the first one and maybe don't buy the second one because you're looking for the best example for the money also.
So number 2, maintenance. So, and I know, Joe, you've got a lot to say on maintenance, and I think you're the guy of our group to go to when it comes to watch repair because you've had a relationship with your watch guy for so long.
I have.
So I won't get too much into this. I'll let you handle that.
Okay.
But again, parts availabilities is going to be an issue. If you're getting some, rare or maybe something from pre 1950, you might have a hard time finding parts for it, or your repair guy will have a hard time finding parts for it, and that's going to drive up service costs. Again, finding the right guy. Joe, you can tell us how you came across your guy. But one thing to keep in mind is when you're buying a vintage watch, also budget in for repair costs because there's a chance, especially if you're buying online, that the description doesn't always match what comes in the mail, and what one person's running watch is, it might be something completely different to you. Okay.
You always have to budget for the service.
You have to budget for the service. Yeah.
Even if it says it's been serviced. Always.
So that's one thing to keep in mind too. So again, I'm going to let you get into that more, but vintage watches as an investment, there's certain ones that you can, but don't go into it as an investment piece. Go into it for the love of it, and you're going to be a lot happier. Now,
so I can kind of speak to the investment part because I track my watches on Chrono24, and it gives you a readout of, hey, you're up or you're down. And my Speedy
Do you really? Oh, wow. That's got to be painful some days.
It is sometimes. However, I'm pretty good right now. But unlike stocks, there's no. This is these items that people generate opinions on, and you can't trust people's opinions. You can't really speculate on opinion, is what you're doing now. Rather, whereas like with the stock, the company's performing based off of what they're producing.
Yeah.
So my Speedy's down a little bit, and that freaking sucks. And I really can't understand or really put out why it's down. It's just that's the way it's working
So
right now.
I'm curious, how accurate is Chrono 24? Because when I go on Chrono 24 to look at vintage prices, they are way higher
Yeah,
than what they're selling for on eBay. Like
astronomically.
like like 3 and 4 times the amount that they're actually selling for on eBay. So
Yeah,
what's your experience with that
Well, the
with
flip side
something
of
like a
that though is that
Speedy?
some of the pieces you can't always find anyplace else though. So
right. So yeah, you can't really trust 20 or Chrono 24 like wholeheartedly. I just kind of look at it, you know, whatever readout is in 1080p, it's not 4K.
it's a for me it's a reference point. You know, I'll take a look at
Yeah,
what it is and it's like, oh, okay, this is what a dealer wants for this watch.
exactly. I feel like they pull their data from what dealers are doing as opposed to what the secondhand market's doing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That would make sense. I'll go with that.
There's also the other part too. The like flea markets, garage sales,
Hmm.
um, used stores, Salvation Army. There's always stories about somebody finding what the pole router that he found at the Salvation Army for $15.
Oh yeah.
You know,
There
that's
was a what was it, an Antiques Roadshow episode where the lady, I think she bought it from a garage sale, the 50 Fathoms.
yeah,
She bought for a couple $100, whatever it was. It was a ridiculously low number for a 50 Fathoms, and they appraised it at like 14,000. It's
right,
like,
yeah.
I mean, it does happen. It's rare.
It's
I mean,
very rare.
kudos to you if you can go out and find something like that. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
you're better at the game than I am already.
Hey, look, if that happens to you, immediately buy a lottery ticket.
Right,
Yeah,
Immediately.
right, absolutely.
yeah. So, I mean, and I told this to Joe a couple weeks ago. I had listened to another podcast. They were interviewing Eric Wind. I don't know if you guys know who he is.
Yeah,
They were talking about the prices of vintage watches increasing by quite a large margin over the next year or so. Um, Again, I'm sure that's more towards the high horology pieces. Will that trickle down to the level that we're at? I would like to see it.
sure.
Not that I'm looking to sell any of my watches, but it's nice to know that your collection is growing in value.
Right.
Well,
But again,
it's not quite like real estate, but it is sort of close because the longer you hold on to some of these mechanical pieces, and I think we're really sort of exclusively talking about mechanical.
yeah.
Maybe Accutron, but probably not. The mechanical stuff is going to go up in value as long as it's still working. It's going to
Mhm.
be small. It's going to be very very incremental, but it's just that's just kind of the way it's going to go. Now, okay, yeah, you maybe your $15 watch is now going to be worth $16, but
Um,
it's more than you paid for it.
It's more than you paid
man,
for it.
I think we're kind of seeing that a little bit now. I sold the Caravel like 2 days ago for double what I paid for 2 years ago.
Well, and see, that's another thing too. It depends on where you buy.
Yeah.
And I mean the price point that you buy in at. What about the big topic of maintenance?
The biggest issue when it comes to maintenance is trust. And who do you trust? How do you trust? Because you're giving them, you know, potentially you're giving them an heirloom piece. You're giving them something that is without cost. There's no the value to it is so high that any damage would make it worthless. So you've got to figure out where you're going, where you're going to do it. And so the first resource that I would point you to is the American Watch and Clockmakers Institute, AWCI, awci.com. What that does, it is one of the largest service provider accreditation in the United States. And they will provide classes and certification for anybody who's interested in doing repair. And so it looks at movement deconstruction, diagnosing issues, the modules. They have a traveling repair bus where you can go in and you can basically take classes like here's how you deal with the automatic movement, here's how you deal with the chronograph movement, here's how you deal with some of the various complications. What this does, what AWCI does, is they offer these classes, and you have to pass the classes. You have to pass the class from an instructor who has also passed in the same class. So you have this accreditation that goes on, and it guarantees through AWCI that your watch will not be ruined by somebody who says, I can fix it. I got a hammer and a screwdriver. It'll be fine. And if you've done anything in the vintage watch world, you have seen the case backs that have been opened up by a screwdriver. You know what I'm talking about. And they got these
for sure.
gouges in it. Okay. So what this does with AWCI is it guarantees a level of skill and a level of professionalism that comes from the service provider. It also will allow AWCI will allow having that accreditation will allow the repair person access to Swiss accounts, so they can get parts directly from the suppliers.
Oh, really?
And there's a different levels of all of that goes along at the same time. AWCI will keep a access to their membership, and they keep a sort of a list of who's been accredited and what are they available for, and you can find all of this stuff up onto their website. So you've got a listing of different qualifications. You have technician 1 through 5, and then it goes through certified watchmakers, certified master watchmakers, and then all the way up to master horologist. And a master horologist would be someone who can create a movement. Make movement from scratch.
Oh man!
Mm-hmm.
And so they're giving you accreditation through all of that. They also work with clockmakers as well, so you've got that as an option. So other places you can go when you're looking for repair, the best resource. You can check with AW, all of the accreditations, but the best resource is going to be word of mouth, and somebody who's had experience with that particular individual. Forums are going to be invaluable. If you can pop onto a forum for whichever brand that you're looking for, whatever specific, so you can, and the forums are going to be broken out. You got people that are interested in French dive watches. You got people that are interested in dive watches. You got people that are interested in particular brands of dive watches. You got sub forums. You've got all this different delving into that you can go to. But if you can find a forum that's dedicated to what it is specifically that you're looking for, someone on that forum will be willing to help. Without question, and they'll be able to point you in a direction when it comes to repair. Do you know of a repair person in this given area? And chances are somebody does. Do you know what their reputation is? Chances are somebody does. Have you had a problem with them? Chances are somebody has. And how they deal with those issues, what's the turnaround time? What's the lead time? All that kind of stuff. And it's a great way to connect with the community. It's a great way to connect with other collectors. You can find pieces. You can trade stories, swap a bunch of stuff. It's a fantastic way to get that information through.
But if you're looking to start, I would go ahead with these so-called Franken watches. You get them really cheap, and if you mess them up,
for sure. And I encourage people, buy yourself a cheap watch. Buy one that doesn't even work. Go find a listing, does not run, and then open it up. If for no other reason, just to learn how it works and what it even looks like inside. I mean, it's very cool, and that's how you do learn. So
see, I immediately I took a look at it. I opened up the back of a watch once, and I took a look at that, and I took a look at it again. I put my glasses on, and I looked at it again, and I said, "No, thank you."
Yeah.
And I am more than willing to pay for that service.
If we're speaking of watch repair, there's also kind of watch building or more assembly, modding a watch like this. This was not a watch I modded. I assembled this from different components, and that can be a cool part of the hobby as well.
And it's such a huge part of the hobby that the modding world is enormous. People may not realize how big that is.
I don't realize how big that is. I don't mod. I look at it the same way that comes to build your own dinner or build your own pizza. I'm not good at it. I know my skill set. That's not it. So
I don't know how you can mess up pizza, Joe.
You would be surprised. You would be surprised. So suddenly somebody's going to put pineapple on it. Ruined.
Yeah.
If you give Joe too many options, he does like a mental reset. He just shuts down and that's it. So for him to do a watch, I don't. Well, maybe.
All right, guys. I'm gonna last call here. So wrap it up. Why don't we go ahead and start off with Mike? What you got for us?
So I want to talk briefly here about NATO straps. One company in particular. So I came across this company purely by accident called Warnikoff. The hardware on this is solid 316 stainless, beautifully brushed finished. It has his logo stamped in the buckle. It has Warnikoff on one of the keepers. A very cool feature. It has a floating keeper, so when you have the excess that you wrap under, it doesn't matter if you have a big wrist or a small wrist. You can always have that keeper in the perfect spot.
Nice.
And the seatbelt material that he has is unlike anything other I've felt before. Super soft. So right now he sells on Amazon. He prefers that's where people go to purchase. All his straps are under $20, 17, 18, $19. Anybody else got something?
I just got the online selling, man. Online selling and answering questions and not getting any bites. I'm still trying to find that magic space of where you list stuff. And Mike and I have had lots of discussions about buy it now versus auction versus all those lists. And so I'm still trying to find my magic spot in that.
I'm a fan of selling with a buy it now. Make your price. Yeah. Somebody out there's going to pay it.
Yep.
The question is how long you want to wait. There's your issue. So
my last call has a special place in my heart. So here we have a blank ammo box. There's nothing here. Each of my family members who served have an ammo box. Mine looks like this. I've got my old NCO stripes when I was a sergeant, officer candidate school, which was how I transitioned into being a lieutenant. And then in accordance to what the rank was, this is my old enlisted collar insignia for being an enlisted engineer. And this is my new insignia as an officer. And this blank box belongs to my youngest brother who just shipped out for Marine Corps Basic. And I'm going to try really hard not to get choked up here myself. But the phone call I got, because some kind dude at the airport was willing to let him borrow his phone for a couple of minutes to call home before he actually got off to Paris Island. The sheer almost terror from anxiety in his voice, it took me back to where I was when I was calling mom and dad, and I was like, oh my God, I have effed myself. I am about to walk into something that I don't think I can handle. I'm not tough enough. And I couldn't help but smile because the adversity and the suffering that he is about to experience will change him, hopefully for the better, but nevertheless, he will be a different man when he comes home. And I hope to God that it's for the better. He will be more confident there, without arrogance, hopefully, but you'll be more confident. There's nothing in life that's going to be harder than what you will experience in the Army or really in the military, I should say. A lot of people can say, oh yeah, my story is kind of like what you went through, but you will never know what it's like unless you've raised your right hand and you swore the oath and that before God and country that you would endure whatever comes at you. So anyway, this is kind of a shout out for him. And I really hope that this works out well for him.
Well, good luck to him.
So this box will be decorated for whatever achievements that he gets when he graduates.
Fantastic.
Very cool. That's brotherly love. That's cool. I like that.
So guys, let's go ahead and run through how people can get in contact with us.
So again, my name is Mike. On Instagram, you can find me 120 clicks, one long word, all spelled out, 120 clicks. Don't do 120 clicks because you get somebody else. Joe?
I am Watch Taylor Youth on Instagram. Casey?
And I am Time Hack, so it's time_hack 1636.
And you can also find us, look for us on our Instagram page, which is the Spring Bar Podcast, at the Spring Bar Podcast. You can also hashtag us in any of your bar shots, watch shots, drink shots, anything you'd like for us to take a look at, please let us know. So you can reach us on Instagram at the Spring Bar Podcast, hashtag at the Spring Bar Podcast for any of your watch shots, at the Spring Bar Podcast for any of that stuff. And then you can also email us at the Spring Bar Podcast at gmail.com. We're available on all of those different mediums, so please reach out. We'll take ideas, we'll take your comments, we'll take pictures, whatever you got.
It's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't freaking stay here. We'll see you next time at the Spring Bar.